Mercedes are not panicking because their car is slow. They are panicking because their fastest weapon might be the thing breaking the championship. Russell's car shut down while fighting for the lead in Canada. Antonelli's car died late in Barcelona after passing Russell. McLaren, using Mercedes' power unit technology, has also suffered battery and electrical failures. And the most alarming part is that these problems are not identical, but they keep coming from the same general area of the battery. That is not bad luck. That is a pattern. Now Mercedes have lost major points, the failed hardware cannot return quickly for full analysis, and the team is being forced to solve a championship-threatening battery crisis mostly through telemetry. Because if this system fails again, it will not just end another race. It could decide whether Mercedes wins the title or destroys its own season from the inside. Subscribe to the channel. To understand why Mercedes are so worried, you have to separate speed from survival. Because speed is not the problem. That is what makes this situation so frightening. Mercedes have built a car capable of winning races. They have a package strong enough to put both drivers at the front. They have Antonelli leading the championship, Russell still fighting in the title picture, and a power unit powerful enough to make customer teams believe they can also fight near the front. On the surface, that sounds like control. But underneath it, the battery system is starting to look like the one weakness that could tear the entire season apart. And this is not a normal weakness. A normal weakness might be poor tire wear, a nervous rear end, slow straight-line speed, a car that struggles in hot conditions. Those problems are painful, but the team can manage them. Drivers can adapt. Engineers can set the car up differently. Strategists can plan around them. A battery shutdown is different. There is no race management when the car simply dies. There is no clever tire strategy when the energy system fails. There is no heroic recovery drive when the power unit switches off and the driver is forced out of the race. That is why the Mercedes problem feels so severe. It is not costing them a little performance. It is removing them from races completely. Canada exposed the danger in the most brutal way. George Russell had taken pole position. He was fighting for the lead. He was not having a bad weekend. He was not stuck in traffic. He was not trying to rescue points from a damaged race. He was in one of the strongest positions a driver can have. Then the car shut down. The energy recovery system suffered a sudden failure. Mercedes later described the issue as an engine kill caused by a battery failure, with heat damage inside the system. That detail matters, because heat is one of the most dangerous enemies of a high-performance battery. When a battery gets too hot, it does not just lose efficiency. It can begin to suffer internal damage. And once that damage reaches a critical point, the car does not gradually become slower. It can stop. That is what happened to Russell. A possible victory turned into nothing. And the damage was not only mechanical. It was emotional. Because Russell was fighting Antonelli directly. That race could have changed the internal balance at Mercedes. If Russell had won, the story of the season would sound completely different. Antonelli would still be impressive, but Russell would have landed a direct answer. The title fight inside Mercedes would have felt alive, balanced, and open. Instead, Russell's race disappeared. Antonelli's path cleared. The points gap changed dramatically. And Mercedes lost a major haul in the Constructors' Championship. That is how one battery failure becomes bigger than one race. It changes the standings. It changes the garage atmosphere. It changes the way people talk about both drivers. It changes how much pressure sits on the next weekend. But Mercedes could still have hoped Canada was isolated. Painful, yes. Costly, yes. But perhaps one failure. One damaged component. One race where the system reached the wrong condition at the wrong time. Then Barcelona happened. This time, it was Antonelli. He had just overtaken Russell. He was running second behind Lewis Hamilton. He was on course for a strong result that would protect his championship lead and reinforce the idea that he had control inside Mercedes. Then his car shut down too. Again, the problem looked electrical. Again, the symptoms pointed toward the same broad battery system concern. Again, Mercedes lost points that should have been safe. That was the moment the issue became impossible to treat as background noise. Because now both sides of the garage had been hit. Russell lost a possible win. Antonelli lost a strong podium finish. And the team had to face the reality that the problem was not choosing one driver, one chassis, or one moment. It was part of the power unit story. That is why Toto Wolff's reaction was so serious. He did not try to dress it up as a minor concern. He said that to finish first you have to finish. He said Mercedes cannot compete for a championship if every second race, a car loses points. That statement cuts directly into the heart of the season. Mercedes are fast enough to win. But if they keep retiring, speed becomes meaningless. This is the nightmare every dominant team fears. Not being beaten by a rival. Being beaten by itself. Because when a rival is faster, at least the mission is clear. Find performance. Improve the car. Upgrade the package. Fight back. But when your own car is fast enough and still fails, the mission becomes more complicated. Do you push the system and risk another shutdown? Do you protect the battery and risk losing the speed advantage? Do you introduce updated modules and risk penalties or unknown behavior? Do you ask the drivers to manage, even when they are fighting each other for the championship? Every answer creates another problem. And that is why the battery issue is so dangerous. It sits directly between performance and reliability. The new power unit rules place enormous importance on electrical deployment. The battery is no longer just a supporting component. It is central to how the Mercedes attacks, defends, and accelerates. It is part of why the car can look so strong. But the more important a system becomes, the more damaging it is when that system becomes unstable. The source points toward excessive battery temperatures, deterioration, and failures coming from the same general area of the battery. That phrase is the one Mercedes cannot ignore. Same general area. It does not mean every failure is identical. In fact, Mercedes have indicated the failures are not all the same. But they appear connected by a common region of the system, and that is even more worrying in some ways. Because a single repeated failure can sometimes be fixed cleanly. A pattern with different versions can mean the whole system is operating too close to its limit. That is the fear. Mercedes may not be dealing with one broken part. They may be dealing with a battery architecture that is being pushed so hard by the demands of the 2026 car that several weaknesses are appearing under race conditions. That would explain why the problem is so difficult to solve quickly. And it also explains why telemetry has become so important. The failed hardware cannot always be studied immediately. Russell's damaged battery module from Canada could not simply be flown back for instant analysis. Because of safety rules around these powerful energy stores, it had to be shipped back to the United Kingdom by sea. That means the physical part may take months to return for deep investigation. So Mercedes have to work from data. Temperature readings. Battery parameters. Energy behavior. Shutdown sequences. Signs of deterioration. Every small abnormal signal before the car died. That data becomes the map. But a map is not the same as holding the broken part in your hands. Mercedes can see what the car reported. They can compare failures. They can test other modules. They can prepare updates. But until the damaged hardware is fully examined, there may still be unanswered questions inside the system. And unanswered questions are dangerous when the next race is already coming. Because the championship does not wait for perfect analysis. Russell still needs points. Antonelli still needs to protect the lead. Ferrari still have Hamilton ready to capitalize. McLaren still need their Mercedes power units to survive. And every team in the paddock now knows Mercedes have a weakness that can end a race without warning. That changes how rivals think. If you know the Mercedes battery system may be fragile, you race them differently. You pressure them harder. You force them to use deployment. You make them defend. You make them chase. You make them stress the exact system they are trying to protect. That is how a reliability weakness becomes a strategic weapon for everyone else. And the problem is not limited to Mercedes alone. McLaren have also suffered power unit-related trouble while using Mercedes technology. Lando Norris had major failures. McLaren saw electrical concerns earlier in the season. The same general battery module area has been part of the conversation. That widens the crisis. Because if this were only one Mercedes Works car, the team might treat it as bad luck. If it were only one driver, they might isolate the usage pattern. But when a customer team is also seeing battery and electrical concerns, the issue becomes more systemic. It becomes a power unit family problem. That means Mercedes high-performance powertrains at Brixworth are not just protecting one team. They are protecting an entire group of cars depending on their technology. And the pressure on Brixworth is enormous. They have to identify the cause. They have to prepare updated battery modules. They have to review the entire pool. They have to make recommendations for customer teams. They have to manage safety, performance, and championship consequences at the same time. All while the clock keeps moving. That is why this first block matters. The Mercedes panic is not about one failure. It is about the shape of the failures. Russell in Canada. Antonelli in Barcelona. McLaren power unit problems. Excessive battery heat. Same general area. Delayed hardware investigation. Lost points. No simple public sign that the issue is fully solved. That is not a small reliability concern. That is a championship threat hiding inside the car's strongest system. And the scariest part for Mercedes is that they cannot simply abandon the system. They need it. The battery is part of the performance. The electrical deployment is part of the reason the car can fight at the front. If Mercedes protect it too much, they may weaken the car. If they push it too hard, they may lose another race. So the team is trapped between two bad options. Go slower to survive, or stay fast and risk collapse. That is the impossible balance sitting underneath their season. And until Mercedes find the answer, every race carries the same hidden question. Will the fastest car on the grid reach the finish, or will the battery decide the championship before the drivers do? And now the battery problem becomes even more dangerous, because Mercedes cannot isolate it as one bad weekend. That is the part that changes everything. A single failure can be explained away. A team can say it was a rare issue, an unlucky component, a one-off event that will not define the season. Drivers can accept that, even if it hurts. Engineers can repair the damage, run checks, and move forward. But when the same kind of weakness begins appearing across multiple cars, the story changes. Because then the question is no longer, why did that car fail? The question becomes, how many more cars are waiting to fail? That is the fear now surrounding the Mercedes power unit family. Russell's failure in Canada was already bad enough. It came while he was in position to fight for a victory, and it created one of the most painful championship swings of his season. But when Antonelli's car shut down in Barcelona, and McLaren also suffered related power unit and electrical problems, the issue started to look much wider than one damaged battery. It started to look like a pattern. And patterns are what make Formula One teams nervous. Because patterns mean the problem may be built into how the system is working under stress. Not always in the exact same way, not always with the same visible warning, but connected by the same weak zone. In this case, the source points toward the battery area, thermal management, and excessive temperatures. That is the real alarm. Mercedes have not simply been fighting broken parts. They may be fighting heat. And heat is one of the hardest enemies to control inside a modern Formula One power unit. Because heat does not need to break something instantly. It can build. It can weaken. It can damage internal structures slowly. It can push a component beyond its safe window. It can create deterioration before the final shutdown ever happens. By the time the driver feels the problem, the damage may already be done. That is why telemetry matters so much. The car might look fine from the outside. The lap time might still be strong. The driver might still be fighting at the front. But inside the battery, temperatures may be climbing, stress may be accumulating, and the system may be moving toward a failure that nobody can fully stop once it begins. This is what makes the Mercedes issue so terrifying for the team. Their car can look healthy until it is not. That is a very different kind of problem from visible damage. If a driver has a broken front wing, everyone knows. If the tires are fading, the lap times show it. If the car is overheating in a simple way, the team may be able to manage it with warnings and instructions. But battery deterioration can be more deceptive. It can sit underneath the race. Hidden. Growing. Waiting for the wrong load, the wrong temperature, the wrong moment. And when it arrives, it does not politely reduce performance. It can end everything. This is why Mercedes are being forced to study the problem from every possible angle. They need to know whether the battery is being cooled properly. They need to know whether the energy deployment demands are too aggressive. They need to know whether certain race conditions make the problem worse. They need to know whether the same modules are at risk, or whether the entire pool needs a new approach. That is not a simple checklist. That is a crisis investigation. And it becomes more complicated because the failures are not all identical. That detail matters more than most fans realize. If every failure were the exact same, Mercedes could attack one specific mechanism. One broken connection. One structural weakness. One thermal pathway. One manufacturing issue. The investigation would still be difficult, but the target would be clearer. But the source says the failures originate in the same general area, without being identical incidents. That suggests a bigger vulnerability. It means the battery system may be operating close enough to its limits that different weak points can appear under different conditions. One car may suffer a sudden shutdown. Another may show deterioration. Another may trigger warnings. Another may fail after different race loads. Same neighborhood. Different doors breaking. That is why Mercedes cannot relax. Because even if they stop one version of the problem, another version could appear. And while they are trying to understand that, the championship keeps moving. There is no chance to pause the season and solve it quietly. Russell needs results now. Antonelli needs reliability now. McLaren need confidence now. Mercedes need to protect both championships now. That urgency is what turns engineering pressure into team pressure. Because every technical decision now carries competitive consequences. If Mercedes introduce updated battery modules, they may reduce risk. But new components bring their own questions. Have they been tested enough? Will they behave the same under race load? Will they create penalties later in the season? Can customer teams receive the same protection quickly enough? If Mercedes keep using the existing pool, they preserve continuity. But then every race becomes a gamble. If they ask the drivers to manage, they may lose the edge that made the car dominant. If they let the drivers push, they may invite another shutdown. There is no clean option. And this is exactly where a dominant team can start to panic. Not publicly. Not in the dramatic way fans imagine. But internally, in the meetings where engineers compare temperature traces. In the debriefs where drivers ask whether they can trust the car. In the strategy rooms where every plan now includes the unspoken fear that the battery might not survive.